Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're here with a Kickstarter preview of an upcoming area control game, a game that you and I have played quite a bit, David.
Quite a few times.
And really, really like. I've already called this one of my top games of 2017, and we're only in April. We're talking about, of course, Path of Light and Shadow by Indie Boards and Cards in conjunction with Action Phase Games. And to help us walk you through the game and some of the design choices, we have Travis Chance, one of the designers of the game itself.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
So we're going to do this a little bit differently. You already have some walkthroughs on how to play the game. We've touched on it briefly with our first look.
Yep.
We'll talk a little bit about how the actual game plays, but we want to get into more of the design aspect and why you chose to handle the game elements in the way that you did, because this does a lot of things really uniquely that I enjoy personally in this style of game. So I'll call this right now a dudes on a map style game. However, it has a singular dude that you're moving around. All of your factions are handled with cards in this game, and you don't handle one faction; you handle all the factions.
Yeah, that's the cool part. Is you're utilizing all the factions. It's not how you divide up the players. So, walk us through what led you to that.
So thematically, the idea is that the players take the role of sort of exiles or deposed leaders, and they're trying to take back the throne. They're trying to take control of the realms, as it's called in the game. Mm-hmm. And since the realms have been in disrepair, literally it's fractured to the point where the provinces aren't even adjacent to one another anymore. It's like the people are just sort of taking control of areas. And there's multiple factions within the game, and you are calling upon those factions to help you. So just like in real life, if you were to say, I am king and I'm going to yell out in the parking lot, come and join me for my cause,
right,
you're going to get a lot of different types of people who may join
You'll get
you.
different genders, different races, different religious backgrounds.
Yeah.
But these are represented by different areas or terrains within the game. But each of these terrains hold inherent ranges of people that may join you. So you have the woodland people that have a very specific type of faction that may join you, but you also have a couple other factions that are within that area itself.
Yes, there's 4 realms, and within each realm there's a majority faction, and then there's a median faction, and there's a minority faction that's the same in all 4 realms, which is the numeri.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed, to help you talk about this a little bit better, is that there's a huge amount of asymmetry between these factions, but there's also some pretty nice synergy between each of them as well. They all do work together. We'll talk about the morale system later, but they all do kind of correlate together in the way that they work. Talk about them individually, though. Yeah,
so I know we're going to talk about that later, but the fundamental aspect of the game is cruelty and mercy. So what kind of a leader are you going to be?
Right.
Now, you would think like these are, very opposed forces, but in terms of game mechanics, you wouldn't want things in your deck that didn't work, right? Like in your empire that wouldn't work. So what we did was we really made sure that everything sort of could weave together in a synergistic way. So even a person who's playing a more merciful strategy can use the cruel cards for at least their higher than average stats, attack stats, whereas the merciful cards tend to be more labor centric. So that's a key aspect of it.
You said it was important to you that you wanted no cards in someone's hand that were. I mean, you can always use one of the cards, right?
Every card is useful.
No matter which way you're going.
Correct. Every card is useful. Another fundamental aspect of the game is wherever you end your turn, you will recruit from that realm. So at the end of your turn, you're going to gain more cards. And no matter what, you're going to gain cards. You can choose to actually gain more cards, which will give you more mercy. But often what you're going to want to do is if you are going to say if I was going to be more merciful, I might want to end up down here in the Hallowed Vale because they have a higher yield of merciful type characters, right? Whenever you conquer a place, you gain cards from that area as well. So it's you're exerting your influence over these people and they're coming to your aid.
That's one of the cool things about the game too, is that you're not picking from these areas who you want to take into your I don't want to call it a deck building game, but it's an empire building game that you're managing the cards. But you don't get to pick who you get, but you do get to pick who you promote and call out of your deck.
Correct.
So each of these factions has not only the cards face down on what you will recruit, but also what you can promote into. Talk about how the promotion line works in this.
So at the bottom of every card, except for everyone will have, there's more asymmetry, and every player starts with an advisor card, and that's sort of the character who's guiding you to your path
Sure.
in the game. So when you promote the cards, all of the cards except for the numeri there's 3 levels. So you'll start with the level 1, which you can promote into the level 2. There's fewer of those cards. And then there's a level 3, which is essentially a legendary.
And it's distinct, right?
It's a distinct card that only one player, the first person to get to that card, will have that card, and no one else will be able to promote into that card anymore. So think of this as sort of your champion. The idea being, sure, maybe you're amassing like this sort of army of different types of people, but you could seek out or train someone to become the best of those types of people.
And those guys carry along with them some pretty significant points compared to the others.
Correct. They're worth victory points. They have more power. Their stats are typically higher or definitely higher, and they have powers that are quite unique in terms of what is going on in the game.
Right. Being that it's an area control game and it's a confrontational game, you have combat. And I see dice on the table. I am not a dice-driven guy. I don't like games like X-Wing for the fact that whatever you roll is typically what you get. I like making very strong strategic choices and using my knowledge of the game to dictate how well I do in that particular game. However, having said that, I love the way that you've handled dice combat in this game.
Yeah, it's a good combination, right?
It's a perfect combination. Talk about how combat actually works, very specifically in the way that the dice work in this game as well.
So whenever conquering is a fundamental part of the game, there is no, I think you guys said this in your first look, you can't just turtle. You can't, there is like a tech tree element to the game, but you can't just sit there and move your cube down. You're going to have to try and take some stuff over. When you are taking stuff, whenever you're taking a conquer action, you play any number of cards from your hand. And what's interesting is the character with the highest strength, you're going to roll dice equal to their strength stat, and then the other cards will contribute a flat sum of whatever their strength is. So, for example, if I played a character with a 3 strength and 2 characters with 2 strength, I would get flat 4, and then I would have to roll 3 dice for the other character. So there's this kind of really interesting mix of determinism with luck. And there's within the game, there's also ways to re-roll the dice and make blanks into, successes, etc. But it's a really interesting way to handle dice in that it allows the player, because your cards are so useful, you want to do so many things. You could go, well, I could send one extra guy and I know I'll win.
Right.
But if I send that one extra guy, then I'm not going to be able to build this thing or promote this guy this turn. I'm going to take my chances. You know?
I feel it leaves a little bit up to chance, but not everything. You don't feel like, okay, I've got 8 dice here, I'm going to roll them up, they all missed.
Yeah. Speaking of combat itself, talk a little bit about the castle structures themselves and how the land actually deteriorates over time, because this is a really important aspect of the game as well.
So we wanted something that sort of represented the casualties, the sort of toil of that war takes in a world like this. So how we represented that was with a mechanism called ruin. So on the dice, there's ruin, and then there's cards and abilities that also allow you to inflict ruin. And anytime you inflict a ruin, you simply diminish the province that you're targeting or wherever you're located.
And its value.
Yes, that lowers its defenses, it lowers its point value, so that makes it easier for you to conquer. It makes it easier for other people to try to conquer from you. And we have 3 sort of intermediate scoring periods where you score 1 point per defense on each of your provinces. And there's 3 different types of provinces. There's villages, which are small, cities, which are the median, and then strongholds, which are the big ones.
That's such a cool aspect, too, because you're going into these territories, you're conquering them, you're destroying them, but then you're finding yourself immediately having to use your abilities to rebuild them in order to get points from them. You want to beat them up, but you don't want to beat them up too much.
There's strategies in the game, too, where because you can take the same action multiple times in most cases in the game. So you could play one character knowing that you're only going to roll, say, 1 die. You'll roll the 1 die. Oh, I got a ruin. Pick it off. I'll play another character. I'll roll 2 dice. Oh, I got 2 ruin. Pick it off. Well, congratulations. You now own a flaming pile of rubble.
While this slide is still up, I want to talk about this. It's kind of a tech tree almost. I love this aspect for it because on your turn, you're allowed to do one of 6 different actions. So all these cards have 6 different ways to be used. But also, you have all these unique abilities too. So you can use the factions that you recruit and go down very specific lines to give you abilities for each of these different cards that you're utilizing from round to round. Talk about that aspect as well, because that's really neat.
So the build aspect, the idea is these are the structures and technology that these factions are using. There's 4. The numeri I don't have aren't represented in this, but you have 5 different tech trees, if you will. There's a general one, and then there's 4 faction-specific ones. Whenever you play your cards, you can see the little hammer there that represents labor. And what you do is you have to play one character from that faction, at least one. Even if they had a 0 in that stat, you still have to. It's like that guy has to sit
Be
there
there represent.
Right.
Yeah, he has to tell them how to build it.
Right.
And then you play the requisite number of labor, and now you have unlocked that ability. And as you can see, you unlock them in order. You can't skip ahead.
Right.
They're all these are pretty they're very useful abilities. And then the last one in each of the tech trees is additional scoring.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, what that shows to me is that not only do you have a lot of variety in this game with how you recruit the factions, where you go up on the board in order to get those, how you promote them, but also in which of these abilities you want to upgrade, because they give you
different
they
routes
change
to
the way that
scoring.
you play the game. Absolutely. Path of Light and Shadow, the name itself. This is built around the morale system.
Yeah.
yep.
You touched on that a little bit already.
Yeah, the big faction here is the Numerai, which you said is kind of the magical entity within this world.
Yeah,
a
it's
very
more of a
cut-and-dried-
medieval game. Yeah.
Right. Talk about the morale system and how that plays into the actual gameplay itself.
So there is the 2 paths in the game, which are cruelty and mercy. There are tracks, so you'll start off on 0, and at some point you're going to make a moral decision in the game through things that you do. So for example, when I said earlier, when you end your turn, you always have to recruit 1 card, but if you want, you can recruit 1 additional card into your discard pile, and you gain a mercy. And whenever you get up to the cap in that mercy track, you then start to score points every time you would gain additional mercy. So it's a way to get victory points. For cruelty, you can cull cards. So you can play a guy, his strength, that card's strength is used to kill cards from your hand or your deck. You're basically
Ousting those people.
you're
as
getting rid of
factions
them
from your-
and
yeah.
perhaps a more violent means than not.
But
Right.
staying lean and mean as
Yeah.
it relates to the gameplay.
And so that'll give you cruelty. So the mercy has like the inherent sort of automatic way that you don't have to spend cards. The cruelty. So there's only 2 fundamental aspects that give you cruelty and mercy. There's tech down here that's going to give you more cruelty and mercy. There's cards that give you cruelty and mercy. And so, yeah, you're going to have to choose which way you want to go. And that's going to really be a fundamental part of how your empire works, because certain cards get better. So the common folk faction, they just want you to be strong in one of the 2. They don't care if you're cruel. They don't care if you're merciful. They just want to follow somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. Yeah. The Sigilborn are mercy based, so they're going to want to build things. They're going to want to add defense back to these ruined territories, and they're going to want to promote guys. The Hordes of Zerd are like these barbarian guys that just want to burn everything to the ground. Kill off the weak and take as much stuff as they can. And then you have the Halax, who are sort of this ambivalent faction, and they have really like this really interesting notion of spending victory points for a plethora of abilities. So they don't really care which way you go. And then the Numerai, as you mentioned, the one magical element of the game and the theme are these big sort of purple giants in the game. And if you're cruel, you get one ability from them. If you're merciful, you get another ability from them. And what's neat about them is they're mixed in here with these cards, and they're the minority faction in all of the realm decks.
Right.
And every time someone gets one, it's the same thing. They're like,
Yeah.
Now, they take 3 times as much to promote.
But they're really cool too, because there's a unique Numerai. Every single one of those cards is unique.
Correct. So where the other ones where you dig through and you find the guy, you see here, get Skull of Zerd, you just draw a Numerai legend.
Right.
You awaken them, you remind them of their sort of former glory, and they join your army.
Yeah.
And if you're cruel, they do one thing. If they're merciful, they do another. So once again, they're very useful.
That's a really fun part of the game for me. I love that injection of discovery in the game, just the idea of getting those Numerai. That happened for me a lot the first time we played, and it was just a joy pulling those guys off, and they are powerful.
Yeah. Every card, like I said, one thing we really wanted in this game was for everything to be useful. We didn't want it to feel like, oh man, I'm merciful and I have a bunch of barbarian guys. Well, guess what? Your merciful guys can build stuff and your barbarians can help you go out and conquer, because your merciful guys aren't as good at conquering.
Yeah, you guys did a fantastic job, and I'm not just saying that because you're here on set. I've told David in the past, this is easily one of my favorite games this year. I love how you've done so much with a singular guy that moves around on the map. all that is represented in the cards that you play, the abilities that you upgrade, the way that you promote your system, and then the morale that kind of changes that path. It kind of ebbs and flows through the course of the game. As you said, you can go one way or the other, or you can kind of straddle yourself right there on the middle, using that benefit left and right as you so choose to go throughout the game. Fantastic game. If you guys want to take a look at this, I highly, highly suggest you check it out on Kickstarter. If you have any questions, I'm going to have you troll our forums for us, answer them for our viewers. Subscribe to us, please. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple. Thanks, Travis, for showing up.
Appreciate it.
And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
This Kickstarter preview has been brought to you by Man vs. Meeple in sponsorship with Quartermaster Logistics. Take a look at all of their fulfillment solutions at qmlogistics.com.